thank you for your interest and your punctual attendance upon this meeting, which we hope to make worthwhile and during which we hope to project our continuing interest in the well-being of Barbadians and Barbados and the Barbados economy. I have some of the members of our economic team with us today. We have Senator Crystal Drakes, who is our lead spokesman on matters of finance and economy, also speaks with reference to climate change, which is a particular interest of hers. I have Senator Caswell Franklin, as you know, speaks with reference to matter of industrial relations and labor law in Barbados, other aspects of parliamentary and constitutionally related issues. Mr. Bruce Hennis, who is our spokesperson with reference to international business and commerce. Harvey Barrett is a former banker and a member of our unit and advises us with reference to matters especially related to the banking sector. Mr. John Carter speaks for us on the matter of agriculture. I think those are the members of the team who are with us today. I see about 6 or 7 members of the media. If I may just ask you to introduce yourself, identify your media house so that we can have a clear record.
All right, Lisa Lord from CBC.
Happy to have you, Lisa.
Janelle Thornhill, Barbados Advocate.
And Janelle from the Advocate.
IQ Level, Starcom Network News.
IQ Level, VOB.
Mr. Henry, Barbados Today.
Barbados Today, Anesta Henry.
Colville Muncie Nation News.
Colville Muncie from all over the place. And
Janique Belgrave, Barbados Advocate.
From Barbados Advocate.
Yes, you have 2 of us today.
Yeah, I noticed that. Now, we had earlier sent off the primary presentation led by myself to give you the facility of some advanced preparation. It's a presentation which took us about 20 minutes to record. And for those of you who have not had the privilege of seeing that and assimilating some of the information, I will try in a very broad way to recap what the focus of that would have been. Now, the Honorable Prime Minister just a few nights ago outlined for us a number of measures which, as indicated by her, were intended to address and forestall the specter of rising unemployment numbers in Barbados, to address the matter of what I call choking in the economy, both at the business level, the business sector level, and at the household level. She outlined a plan which, to our view, in the People's Party for Democracy and Development, represents an attempt at a quick fix, does not necessarily speak to even the medium-term view or the long-term view with respect to economic growth forecasts for Barbados, the expansion of the Barbadian economy, or the diversification of the platforms upon which the economy is premised. The measures, as I understand it, also were intended to protect the negative impact upon the Social Security National Insurance Scheme, largely to help small businesses to overcome, in the immediate context, the very immediate context, 1 or 2 of the hurdles which they will have to face, to encourage a facility for the larger business sector, to provide funding for refurbishment of the tourism-related infrastructure hotel plant, and to provide also for some immediate emphasis on agricultural output in Barbados. There were a number of specifics which were outlined. The larger part of the presentation in terms of the resources being provided seemed to suggest that the greater stimulus intended by government is a $1.7 billion capital works program, part of a $2 billion injection into the economy to stimulate economic activity to help struggling businesses, to provide for vulnerable households, and to shore up the country with respect to available food supplies to it coming out of the domestic market rather than the over-reliance traditionally which we have on imported imported food bill. Like I said, it's a $2 billion injection, which I presume is intended to be a stimulus, but that goes over 2 years. Prime Minister did admit of a level of fear that should we not, in the immediate context, address rising unemployment, then of course the social stability of the country is threatened by what, to all intents and purposes, is for us a very unfamiliar set of circumstances where people are out of work or likely to be out of work and shut into their homes for a long period of time with business closures all around us. A heavy emphasis is laid on construction in these, in the provisions which she enunciated. Construction in historical terms has sometimes been, in some people's view, the savior for Barbados with respect to keeping unemployment levels at a reasonable position. And therefore the recourse seemingly is being made to construction again, and a lot of that construction revolves around tourism projects. Some of that construction, of course, relates to government's intended capital works, road works, the refurbishment of some existing government buildings which may have fallen into a state of repair. And the Prime Minister also hinted without much detail that some of that construction would relate to government's initiatives within the sector, the technology sector, the digital sector, and with respect to mounting of a green energy program, $360 million, I think was the figure which she cited. Not much of details would have been presented on that. Of course, the monies being targeted for the tourism sector amount to me to be a bailout. Likewise, those for the small business wage fund, which is exactly that, simply a wage fund that goes on for a few months and targets small businesses that employ 5 people or more. The measure that is intended to bring some relief and comfort to self-employed persons, not now included fully in the legislation vis-a-vis national insurance provisions, unemployment benefits and stuff like that, is a measure which provides for 2 months support of $1,500 for each month, so $3,000 over 2 months, which I suppose may stop or fill a hole immediately, but which will not go significantly anywhere near supporting the expansion of small businesses. This party believes very strongly that some mechanism must be found that would allow for self-employed persons not to be this way disadvantaged when faced with this type of shock. We perhaps have to study models that exist elsewhere. The program repeats what the Prime Minister outlined before the Parliament a couple of months ago with respect to the effort to help vulnerable homes, homes in which perhaps all parties previously working would have lost their job. And it's a $20 million program, 10 million of which will come to the Welfare Ministry. Another 10 million will come, I presume, through the Prime Minister's office, the mitigation unit, etc. We have concerns that though these measures might seem necessary in the context of trying to make an immediate response to address the projected decline in the Barbados economy, which the governor of the central bank and others are suggesting may in fact climb into double digits, and that unemployment itself may treble or quadruple over time. Now, so there may be some appreciation that these immediate responses are necessary. We hold the view, however, that this is a time perhaps at which the government should be looking to set a direction or to send the signal that we want to see the Barbados economy go in a different direction, where there's not that over-reliance on tourism, where there is strategic expansion into new sectors, whether it's the creative sector, the new and green energy sectors, the area of technology, the creatives, what have you. We believe that perhaps the government's vision should be more distant in terms of its view than is represented in these figures, and that perhaps the opportunity, if we persist along this road, may be missed to turn around the Barbados economy, to set it on a different course. One of the things that COVID would have taught us is that this present situation shows the unwisdom of putting all of our eggs in the tourism basket. The governor of the central bank has hinted. This party, I know I myself have spoken on this in the floor of Parliament and outside, fear that we may have to see the government making recourse to the printing of money through the central bank to help in the current situation. We've just gone through the exercise of the annual estimates. One has to question now the relevance of those numbers. One has to question how these new proposals and this current situation and the need to redress it will impact upon those estimates. So we're concerned about a reversal of recent policy, and we may have to see government going back for central bank support. We are concerned about the impact on the national insurance scheme as well. The Prime Minister did say, in fact, that the scheme is sufficiently asseted, if that's a proper word, has a sufficient asset base as that it can respond to current demands. But she, at the same time and in the same words, admitted of the absence of liquidity with the fund, and underlined or underscored that government may have to find support for the national insurance scheme and may in fact have to go to the position where they make provide for an early redemption on some of the government paper held by the national insurance. Of course, we as a party continue to express our concern as to the governance structures around the national insurance scheme, as well as the Central Bank of Barbados. We have called for, and we repeatedly are continuing to do so, that there be a governance structure around these two significant entities such that they are more so insulated from political interference and from the influence of the political agenda. The Prime Minister hinted in the context of these things, NIS and the recourse to the central bank and the early redemption of government paper NIS holdings, that in fact we may find the introduction of something which she calls a pandemic solidarity bond a useful mechanism of response. She did not give a lot of details. We feel that our ears are suggesting to us that you were talking about perhaps some adjustment in public servants, public service pay and remuneration, and that may in fact, you may in fact be going to a situation where people, because of the call for the whole of society response at the time and sacrifice on the part of all of us, that public servants perhaps may be called upon to accept remuneration in terms of normal cash plus bonds maturing over 3 or 4 year period. That has not been clarified. I think it has been said by the Prime Minister that she wants us to sleep on this and that there will be further consultation on that matter. Prime Minister outlined for us the fact that she is now being advised by Trade, Investment and Jobs Advisory Council. I am surprised to know that that has been established, and with the obvious expertise and experience gathered at the table in the context of that entity, that we have these initiatives emerging ahead of a report from that council. I trust that these measures may in fact find concordance with that council because they've studied them, analyzed them perhaps more than we've had the opportunity to do, and find that there is merit and worth in them. I hope that when that council does report, the Prime Minister said in 3 or 4 weeks or so, that what their report would represent a larger vision for Barbados and not simply emphasize this type of immediate piecemeal response. And when I say piecemeal, I don't mean to derogate in any way the effort. I'm simply saying that in terms of the larger vision and in terms of the larger need for developing the Barbados economy, what we're saying is immediate and therefore piecemeal, because it largely revolves again around construction and around tourism. These are some of the things that come readily to mind as I reflect upon what she said. I'm almost talking as long as the original presentation, so I want to stop and give you the opportunity for some questions, and also we can have input from any member of our team present with us. Like I said, we have Senator Drake, Senator Franklin, Bruce Hennis, Harvey Barrett of our unit, John Carter, who I don't see at the moment, and my personal assistant, Erskine Bratt. So, Crystal, would you like to say anything before we go to questions, or Bruce or Caswell, Harvey?
Just to reiterate what you have been saying, and this is to drive home the point about how government is trying to embark on keeping the economy afloat. If we take, for instance, the measures outlined in regards to the Green Energy Park, that's supposed to be a sum of $360 million. If you want to engage in a exercise where you want to have job creation and create opportunities, I believe if you could take some of the $274 million, which is allotted to the refurbishment of buildings, road constructions, market refurbishments, and the environmental cleanup towards renewable energy, that is a better way in spending your capital works expenditure at this time. Because when you engage in renewable energy projects, you also have, there are other infrastructural needs around that where you can create jobs. For instance, the installation of charge ports across the islands, the retrofitting of buildings, battery storage, and as well as a greater penetration of renewable energy and energy efficiency in our housing stock. And that argument is along the lines of, if we're spending $600 million every year in fuel imports, if we can put our efforts towards focusing jobs that save us foreign exchange, then we can become a more resilient society. And it is not against saying that you don't want to have capital works in roadworks or refurbishments, but I think at the moment, given the uncertainty of what lies ahead, you have to then be very careful where you spend these expenditures. For instance, if we go along the lines of traditional capital works programs as it relates to roads and other things like that, what we could see is that those funds go to particular businesses that are established here in Barbados. And then that money goes to incomes, which leads to private consumption, which then leaks back out of the country. If you can engage in capital works programs that save you foreign exchange, then I believe that those types of projects should be prioritized. The same as it relates to food security. I believe government can be a lot more ambitious as it relates to how we reinvent our agricultural and food security sector. The government is talking about having an additional 750 additional acres being cultivated under the feed program. And I have not heard much in relation to smart farming. For instance, are we building greenhouses? Are we building plants in relation to hydro and aquaponics and even vertical farms? I think if we spend money in those areas and provide jobs in those areas, it would put us in a better position as it relates to food security, climate proofing, the agricultural sector. And we would be also then saving money, because a dollar saved is also a dollar earned. What I have not also heard from the government is what mechanisms are being put in place as it relates to the trade policy to ensure that local produce is also given preference on the local market, and also what either centralized or decentralized way can we formally engage in a distribution system for those farmers so that they don't have to worry about selling produce, but just producing at the initial stages. So essentially what I want to reiterate, and the bishop has said it also as well, is we have to make sure that any expenditure that seeks to save us foreign exchange, at least in the near and medium term, that can also provide us with jobs and business opportunities should be prioritized, like renewable energy, like food security, rather than the traditional tourism sector, which at the moment we have no idea when it will resume. And from all reports, it seems as though there will be a dampened demand for that sector in the next 1 to 2 years. So we are in a precarious position as it relates to where revenues will come from in the future. So therefore, what we're saying is we need to build a more resilient local economy, which is based on things like renewables, food security, and also developing a digital platform by which persons here in the local market can tap into the global market as easy as possible to then earn foreign exchange. And that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you very much, Senator Drakes. Maria Phillips has joined us. She is a member of PDP who speaks on governance and law and order. I think she's here today in her legal capacity to make sure Caswell Franklin says nothing that gets him in trouble in relation to civil suit. Senator Franklin, anything to say, Bruce? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just want to endorse what Crystal has said, because we are speaking about refurbishing hotels and all kind of stuff. Where people are going to go? Who's going to come? You know, so you're going to build capacity, and there's going to be no people to put in it, because a lot of the people that will come to Barbados are in the metropolitan countries, and they're suffering badly from this COVID thing. They don't have to rebuild their economies. They don't have extra money to do travel. In the United States, the chairman of the Federal Reserve said that they will start coming back from September. So if there's going to be a lag, if they start in September, we are not going to start in September. So I think we're putting the money in the wrong place. If you're going to put it where it matters, put it in agriculture, where we'll feed ourselves. Just recently, wanted some yams, and had to wait till the boat from St. Vincent came in. You know, we have too many idle plantations in Barbados that just bearing coverage, and we call it we're tampering. So I endorse everything that Priscilla said, and so I'm not going to repeat it.
Can I invite you, Kazi, to make a comment also on that aspect of the proposals of the Prime Minister that speaks to this? Is it a 40 million VAT loan facility? Because I included that point in my presentation, the written presentation. Or can you speak to that?
Yes, because I don't understand it myself, because companies don't pay VAT. Companies collect VAT and hand it in. So if it is so you are just giving people money on the guise of giving somebody's money. I don't know why, but let's say over $200,000 you don't pay VAT. Under $200,000 you don't pay VAT. So these are going to be big companies that you will give extra money to. What about the small businesses that don't pay VAT, that still have employees? Who's taking care of them? And then the small businesses need more help than these large companies. Big large companies will have their banks that will think that some of them are too big to fail, and they're going to help bail them out. But you have small businesses, and I'm sure Senator Lynette Holder will have something to say about that when she discovers that the money is going to big business and not the small business sector. I saw she was very happy when she heard about a little bit of small business, but she didn't analyze what was happening in the actual speech. So the money is going where it is not needed most.
But of course, we seem to be crediting companies for paying in VAT funds, which they've collected in the name of the government and for the government. So we're crediting them and making that a qualification criterion for access to this 40 million. We as a party, media friends, would want to hope Now, none of these businesses would have been the beneficiaries of recent tax waivers in Barbados. Feel very strongly on that.
Yeah, because remember that last year they waived the VAT from 1997. They said 1996, but it was actually 1997 because nobody collected VAT before the 1st of January 1997. But they were so anxious to rush and give these people some money that they got the thing wrong. And they wrote off over $1 billion. That's with a B, not million, $1 billion in VAT that people actually collected. So they're going back and giving them money again. I do not understand it. When we're in a crisis, you're still looking to take care of your friends.
Yeah. Bruce, do you have anything to say before I let the media loose on you guys?
Yes, sir, I do. Yes, sir, I do. Just want to reiterate based on what the team has been saying. And I want to go back to the central bank governor. There was a key comment that he made, and it backs what you were saying, Bishop Atherley. He said, we need to take advantage of the opportunity provided by the crisis to refocus and to accelerate our efforts at economic diversification. And so therefore, they're also recognizing the criticality of economic diversification. We have basically, as you said, all of our eggs in one basket. When you look at the largest carrier in the world, which is American Airlines, they just reported a $2 billion loss for this quarter. And as a result, as they said, while no one has the perfect crystal ball, they expect, as Crystal had said correctly, that the demand for air travel will be suppressed for quite some time. They're even looking at now having to carry fewer seats as a result of this whole crisis in order to keep their profitability online. They already were bankrupt. They came out of bankruptcy, and now they have to manage their finances extremely critically and carefully. The problem, as you had said and correctly, with this program that we're entering into, yes, it's a $2 billion program. I had to say another critical part about that just now too. But the critical part here is that the vast majority of that program, at least 64% of those funds, way over 50%, way over 60% even, are, as you said, directly being invested in tourism-related projects and capital works as well. They're very critical things, but then we have a problem. We do not have strategic direction that appears like coming from the Jobs and Investment Advisory Council, which has been set up because according to the narrative, it says they have only had initial meetings and they still expect to receive reports from the various subcommittees. So we're charging ahead with the program without maybe having had any strategic direction in the program. And we have already committed well over $1 billion. There's an IMF factor that has now come to that as well from yesterday. It looks like I read through that last night. The other thing in terms of us focusing now heavily on the tourism, which is what this massive investment program is doing, the world's second largest tourism market in terms of expenditure in tourism. That's people who spend money. That's the United States, which is second only to China. They have taken a beating out of this world with their own economy. And so we're therefore in a situation where we're hoping that things will turn around this year, but they might not, and they probably will not. What is happening is that Barbados in itself, if we come from the outside and start to look inwards, one of the last tourism reports, global tourism reports that was issued pertaining to Barbados, we were ranked number 134 out of 136 countries in terms of price competitiveness, i.e. we're very price uncompetitive or non-competitive. Senator Franklin, he's a Latin expert, so he would have to hit me there in the language, okay? But we're very price non-competitive. Switzerland is most expensive, United Kingdom's the next most expensive, and then Barbados is third. In terms of natural resources, we rank very poorly there as well, 118 out of 136 countries. For cultural resources and business travel, we also in a very poor position. We are ranked 123 out of 136 countries. And to top it all off, what is not seemingly being brought to the forefront is that since 2006, and that was the peak year before the markets crashed and the global economy crashed, and we went into what is now known as the Great Recession, our share of tourism receipts globally, our share has been diminishing dramatically to the point now since 2006, it has fallen by just about half. And our share of arrivals there have also fallen since the year 2005 when we peaked to about 30% of what they were back then. And to confirm what Crystal is saying, so if we now start to push jobs, which is a very key thing, but we do not have a vibrant source of foreign exchange revenues to counter that, we're going to run into a problem that's going to have an adverse impact on our foreign exchange reserves. Once again, you're pushing jobs, you're going to have a high level of employment, but then that money is going to be buying goods from overseas, because an example of that was back in the year 2008. We had in the year 2008 one of our lowest levels of unemployment ever, but then that was countered by one of our highest levels of imports, retained imports, and as a result, we had one of our highest negative trade balances, where we imported way more than we exported, and that was in a 40-year period from 1978 to 2018. That was the worst thing we'd ever done. So I'm just confirming what Crystal is saying, Senator Drake, and what Senator Franklin, and what you're saying, Bishop Atherley. To just add one little last extra piece, this IMF package that we got involved in yesterday, where we are signing on to an extra 90 million US dollars, that's 180 million Barbados dollars. It sounds very good, but in light of the fact that a lot of it is going into one product, that's tourism, it's something that we have to be very cautious about, because when you look at the statistics and the analysis of that, what that extra 90 million US dollars has actually done to Barbados as a nation. It has now made us a country of all the 39 countries in the IMF program and having IMF programs. Barbados now is the sole country carrying the largest debt per person. We have now even gone past Argentina. I think we're now carrying as much as about 1,300 US dollars per person in terms of debt. So we have now gone into a whole new space. So we have to be careful where we manage how we manage our money and where we put our resources in this season. That's it for me.
Thank you, Bruce. Harvey, anything you want to say before we go to the media?
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, please. My contribution today would be it's economic in the sense that it deals with the banks and the relationship of banks to the public, and also borders on societal, in that it deals with the relationship and the treatment or the services to the public, especially the most elderly in our society. During the presentation of then the governor's central bank, he was doing the review of the first 3 months of the year, and he echoed some instances from what the Prime Minister presented on Wednesday. So it might be relevant to make this contribution here at this time. He had made a comment that the banks have introduced higher fees as a deterrent to persons using counter service, trying to steer them to use ATMs. What would be expected is that banks would basically demonstrate to the older folks, especially, how to use these ATMs, and not take for granted that because ATMs have been around in Barbados since the 1990s, that everybody knows how to use them. Also, it should not be dependent upon that the seniors would allow or want to allow their offspring to show them the use of ATMs. Because this could very well expose the seniors to, if you will, domestic fraud. And on top of that, on top of the fact that the seniors and our citizens who are in their golden years are more susceptible to COVID-19, that would really be a hard blow. On top of that, to have people who are elderly exposed to fraud because they're not allowed to use the ATM by themselves. They may need some help, but to expect that their offspring will show them how to use the ATMs, you know, as I want to emphasize, that may present some problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Hartley. Members of the media, please. Questions, comments, comebacks?
Bishop Atherley,
Mosey.
you would have mentioned about the possibility, and this seems to have found concurrence with comments made earlier by Dr. Don Marshall about the possibility of bonds being used to offset the wage bill, the wages of public servants. Besides asking for clarification, because I know that that's what you're doing, you're asking for clarification if this is the case. Do you have some insight as to if government is leaning in this direction? That's the first question. The second question is, in terms of honoring those bonds in 4 or 5 years, what types of rates are you talking about that would be responsible, that would not put government in further debt as it relates to those bonds? What type of rates would be acceptable if they have to go down that route?
Well, the way I look at this matter, Mr. Mosley, is this. The government wants to have some stimulus in the economy, keep activity going, especially in the absence of the input from the tourism sector, the lack of performance there. So you want to keep the economy going. The government, therefore, is looking to inject money into this economy. Now, the question is where all of it comes from. Some of it is going to be derived from borrowings, as Bruce has indicated there just now. Government is not in a position to raise taxation levels in Barbados at this time, in my view, even prior to COVID. And though we had anticipated that we would have expected some new user fees, I don't expect that they can come now. Government probably will have two options: to try to absorb, if the private sector cannot do it, government will have to try to absorb some of the excess unemployment in the economy. Therefore, a reversal of the policy of trimming the public sector wage bill, because they may have to employ some more people. I think I hear the Prime Minister saying, so it's not that I have any inside information, definitely I don't see how I can have that. But I heard the Prime Minister fairly clearly saying, look, we're in this together. 60% of us may have to carry the rest of us, and so we would have to contribute. And perhaps you need to start to think in terms of a situation where your remuneration is cash plus bonds that that mature in 3 or 4 years. I have no more information than that. I do not know what level of return will come on that investment on public servants if we're asked to make that type of investment, or sacrifice, if you prefer that term. Those who practice, I suppose, the economic skills on a daily basis may be able to project on that and to tell you, if you go that route, what would be a good return in that 3 or 4 years. My concern will be a situation where in an administration which just reneged on some of its commitments relative to investment in government paper, comes so quickly on the heels of that to offer government paper. We look to see where the consultative process will go. We look to see where those on the inside will stand on this, especially those who are leaders of labor in Barbados. We look to see where that will go. But my concern is that there is probably a lack of appetite right now in the Barbados economy for investment in government paper. But government might find itself so constrained in terms of available revenues to meet its wage bill and to provide for social services and other services in Barbados that it feels forced in that direction.
Could I join you by
I was just going to invite
answering that question, but I want to put on my trade union hat. I hope you don't mind, Mr. Mumsy, because I know you were like that. In 1991, government cut salaries by 8%, and during the IMF program as well. At that point in time, when they did the first run of salaries for the Treasury, a lot of people had $0.00 as their net. That is a fact. You can check it. Civil servants in particular, that I know about because I deal mostly with civil servants, they are leveraged out. Their mortgages, car loans, children's school, they don't have any monies left. They can't afford a cut. Now, if you cut, and Bishop Atherley just alluded to it, they're not going to and give bonds. Who's going to trust government bonds? Nobody in the next 40 years in Barbados will believe that government will not do the same thing ever again. And also, it is, and right now, you can't sell those bonds to somebody else. If you have a bond should be a thing that you can say, well, okay, I can't afford to keep this bond. I can sell it to another investor who would rather hold it for the period. Who is going to buy government paper? Nobody's going to do it right now. So ask the government, tell them, please, stay away from the civil servants. Salary one, they can't afford a cut because a lot of them are right to the edge. And you must also remember that in the entire period, but except for one time, when Thompson first came into office, he gave a salary increase. Then for the next nine years, almost 10 years, there was no salary increase. And everything in Barbados went up. The only thing that didn't go up in Barbados during that time was salaries. This government came in and they gave the civil servants, mind you, they were masterful. The civil service moved from, the union moved from 23%, and they went right all the way down to 4.5%. And then after, well, I made some noise about it. I saw then that the Prime Minister then upped it to 5%. But that's 5% over 10 years. So while everything was going up in Barbados, civil service salary then went up in the end by 5%, which is equivalent to half of 1% over the period, every year for the period. So they don't have any money, they don't got a cushion. Civil servants don't have a cushion. I can tell you who have the cushion. You have a lot of people who are in your cabinet right now who were basically unemployed or underemployed. They can afford a cut because before they were getting $0. Now they're getting $14,000 and $15,000, $16,000. A fellow who was getting $0, and then you start giving him, he can take a cut. Mind you, they can take a whole cut in the cabinet itself because, again, using Ms. Motley's Prime Minister Mullins, she said that the Van der Straat cabinet was 17 people. Now it's 5 more than Barbados need. Well, if under Fandel, the country needed 12 ministers, why she think she need 26? So she can start there, you know. And I'm all for that. Cut some of them because they're falling over each other to find something to do. There's not enough work, especially when you have 2 ministers in the ministry, which is also, by the way, unconstitutional because the Constitution does not allow you to have 2 ministers in any one ministry. It says a minister, and if the minister needs help, you assign a parliamentary secretary. You can check the Constitution if you doubt me. I don't know if I have I can probably tell you the exact section in a minute or two, but so you can make significant savings there. Leave the civil service salaries alone. They can't afford it. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, you've heard from one union leader.
I actually want to jump in and ask Senator Franklin a question. With more businesses set to reopen on Monday, are you satisfied that enough measures have been put in place to safeguard these workers when they return?
I don't think so, because I've been having, I do have some people in the private sector as well. And it seems as though the emphasis is getting economic activity going. But I don't see that there was any vision as to how you're going to get these people protected. A lot of our places don't have the space that you can accommodate social distancing, right? That is the first major problem I have, right? Then bus transportation. A young lady is calling me this morning because she lives in St. Lucie. She can't get to Bridgetown now if the buses are taking the warm seat, because by the time when they get to her bus stop, they're already full. I talk about normally. They're going to be full before they get to her. They have to look and find ways, like how they do at air traffic control, to transport the people to and from work. That is something that they must take into consideration. Have dedicated services for their employees. Failing that, we are going to, the numbers are going to start climbing again. And when it comes to this COVID-19, because we are saying things, but we are not putting them into practice. Even my own thing when I came out to the Senate last week, a few people criticized me for it. But here we are in a situation where they say you can't go to church. If your family died and you can only have 10 people at the funeral. If you're going to get married, if you don't want to live in sin, you want to get married, the couple, the priest, and the 2 witnesses that are required by law. But you're going to ask 21 senators to appear, 3 clerks, and 2 people from the cabinet office to drop in the room. So even the government is not taking their business seriously. I objected to that because I thought it was madness. I don't mind putting myself out if it was a necessary, something necessary to do. But one, the Senate does not have any role to play in the emergency legislation, so we didn't have to be there. And then you're dealing with legislation that, mind you, is unconstitutional and should have been done in 2017. So if government is being so reckless with its own Senate, what are you thinking about it done with the rest of the people?
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned the $40 million VAT loan fund, which I understand is being capitalized from the catastrophe fund. So we're repurposing that fund. From what I understand, you have to go to Parliament then to change how you're going to use the funds from that facility. But how do you feel about that being repurposed?
Just before the hurricane season starts?
Yes, a mere month before the hurricane season starts.
In the document I sent you, I addressed that, and I hope you do get access to that, because I have serious concerns. We have serious concerns that on the verge of the hurricane season, you are raiding the catastrophe fund to underwrite the establishment of a VAT loan. Now, listen, not too long ago, the former administration was chided for their attempts
Caswell needs to mute his mic.
Yeah, I was saying the former administration, you recall, was chided for attempting to use the catastrophe fund for purposes other than were intended. And we are on the verge of a hurricane. I don't think the justification given for raiding the catastrophe fund established over the last decade is sufficient to suggest that that move is a strong one. So we have some serious concerns.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I keep going.
Yeah, the air travel sector has been significantly impacted due to the fallout, and LIAT has been struggling for some time. Obviously, no more under pressure. As a shareholder country, what do you believe should be the approach to LIAT now? Do we continue to pump money into the airline? Do we look at restructuring or pull up?
Well, we've always thought that some measure of restructuring of LIAT was necessary. You need to have more of the member countries that benefit from the movement of LIAT through the region, contributing more significantly to the operations of LIAT. We understand it from this distance that we need to have some adjustments also in the management and administration culture of LIAT. There's a lot of wastage and efficiency which can be cut out of the system. The region must have, of course, air transport links. So you need the mechanism. I have no problem with LIAT. LIAT, to a large extent, has proven itself to be reliable, but it is proven to be a costly enterprise. We cannot persist with a situation where some member countries who benefit substantially from LIAT do not contribute. You cannot continue with a management culture that does not serve the levels of efficiency of operation that you want to see, or that incurs the kind of wastage of which we hear. Now, one of the members, prominent members of the current Advisory Jobs Investment Council was made the point person of the renewed effort to get LIAT on the right track. I really was looking forward to see what would have come forth out of that. But of course, we've been interrupted by all of that. All I'm trying to say, Akil, is we cannot do without a facility of transport that allows for growth in the Caribbean economies and allows for social interaction across the Caribbean. LIAT is the entity that has served us. We have had problems with it. These problems should be and can be corrected if a diligent attempt and effort is made to do so. Crystal, I don't know if you have any thoughts on LIAT.
Not necessarily LIAT, because I think you've covered all the points, but I think we also have to seriously look at alternative means of transportation in relation to things like sea travel and ferries, because what is clear is that in order for one Caribbean as a whole to bounce back from this, we desperately need more regional activity occurring within the Caribbean space. And one of the ways by which we can do that is looking at alternative travel, and that is by sea. But the member countries have to come together and figure out a system and a network that allows people to move freely between the countries. And that would also assist also in tourism as well. If you look at it, if a person is coming to the region and then they can easily move throughout the Caribbean, then that also enhances the value of the Caribbean tourism product. But these are things that have been long on the back burner and need to come to the fore now that we're faced with this crisis.
I think if I could add, Crystal makes a very valid point of the interconnectivity using ferries. And we tend traditionally to think of a ferry use as for simply strictly cargo, commercial purposes relative to cargo. But I can see very clearly a situation where, as Crystal just mentioned, when somebody coming out of the UK, coming out of North America, or elsewhere, comes into Barbados, and then having traveled here by air, they can do a cruise through the Caribbean using that mode of transport, which I am sure will be more economical in terms of what they have to do. The other thing is the cost structure, actually the cost structure associated with LIAT. You talk about efficiency, you know, wastage, that's true. The other side of the story is that if you examine the cost structure of the LIAT airfare cost structure, stuff like that, you see that a lot of it revolves around government cost extraction in the fare structure. In other words, a lot of taxes and charges which go to the government, and some of them are duplicated across the region. Now that is an issue, and that's something we have to deal with. But transportation also in the wider frame. When Caswell was speaking earlier, I thought I would have interjected, but I don't want to interrupt him. Mention, because we assume that when North America comes back, when the UK market comes back, that we will automatically see a comeback in the Caribbean. But I don't know if it's necessarily true. I'm watching what is happening with Virgin Atlantic right now. And I am quite concerned about the potential negative impact on the travel market for Barbados coming out of the UK because of what is happening to Virgin Atlantic. And who knows what the future holds for BA. And who knows what the future holds for a lot of the American airlines, the North American airlines that go to Canada and the US. So this whole business of transport is a vital consideration. I do not know that we are giving the urgent attention even to matters of layout. Bruce, did you have anything on it?
No, I concur with you guys. It has been on the table for years. I mean, this is, I think, about over 30 years that they've been working on restructuring that particular airline, and many projects have been done pertaining to it. But I think, as Crystal said, and you said, and as Akil here is asking, we probably, in this particular season that we're in, we really are in a very challenging financial season. We're going to have to really go back to the table, as you had said, Bishop, and re-examine everything from the ground level right on up. Because, as you said, even American airlines, they've had to look at their fleet sizes. They've had to scale back. United Arab Emirates, they said that they've probably had to give up a lot that they've had to do. And so it's now come to that point in time where us in the Caribbean are going to be forced to do likewise, I guess.
Okay,
Sorry, were you speaking, Caswell?
yes, I wanted to, not just now I said, I will just check the Constitution further because I don't want to give you the research to do. It says the Governor General, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, may, by instrument under the public seal, appoint from among the members of the two houses parliamentary secretaries to assist ministers in the discharge of their function. The Constitution does not allow you to appoint a minister to assist a minister. And right now we have 3 ministers of finance, 2 at public works, 2 at housing. You see the savings that we're talking about?
2 at foreign affairs.
And 2 at foreign affairs. This is contrary to Section 73 of the Constitution. You have 1 minister, and then you can appoint a parliamentary secretary, so be it, if you want one. But everybody's a minister. So who's the boss? And mind you, all of them are paid the same salary. Whether you are the minister responsible for the ministry and you're in charge, overall charge, there's no junior minister, even though people in the press call the person junior minister, there's no such thing in our law. Everybody gets the same salary. In the public service, you are determined junior or senior by your salary. If you get the same salary, you're at the same level.
Yes, Janelle, you were asking a question. I thought I saw your hand.
Yes. I want to go back to what I asked you in terms of the hurricane season. We're, 4 weeks away from it. Do you think that the country is sufficiently prepared to deal with
I don't know.
that all of the emphasis that we've put now on COVID, have we neglected that area?
I don't know, 4 weeks away. I already heard CBC, did I not, Lisa Lord, reporting of the first tropical wave?
True, that is true.
Of the season, so I don't know, we're 4 weeks away. And I think you may be onto something there. It may be that we are so caught up with the uncertainty around COVID and the negative impact that we're already experiencing, that which is projected, that we perhaps have not that we're not possessed of the perhaps level of apprehension that we may normally be possessed of relative to the hurricane season. I pray very earnestly that we are not. In fact, none of the countries of the Caribbean are visited this year by a system. We certainly can't take that here in Barbados. And I really don't feel comfortable with the fact that the government would make recourse to the catastrophe fund on the eve of the hurricane season, notwithstanding the stress that's caused by the COVID. So, yeah, I'm concerned about that. Any question? Anesta, Janique?
Senator, if I'm the devil's advocate, right?
You
work for the nation.
That's a strange language for a fellow working. And you're addressing the question to me. You're telling me you're the devil's advocate. My response immediately would be, get thee behind me, Satan.
Yes. the COVID-19 crisis can be seen as force majeure. It could be seen as a catastrophe. I mean, is it not?
It is. It's catastrophic. It portends to even become cataclysmic, if you want to use all that extreme language. But the fact of the matter is, you are on the cusp of the hurricane season. Recent patterns suggest some monstrous systems. The projections for this year is 5 very serious systems. And I just say I'm not comfortable with use of the catastrophe fund, even in the face of the current situation.
All right. Okay.
You're saying it's not wise.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
We're telling the Mayor Motley administration that this is not a wise thing to do.
I'm saying I'm concerned about it, and I think most Barbadians would. This is a fund that's been established and accumulated volumes over the years, and despite the immediate pressure, this is what's an extra $50 million. I don't know that there is the need to go there with all that we have access to otherwise, because we can't just say we're faced with COVID and dismiss the possibility that a system could come our way. I think last year we were hit by a strong storm, was it, or the year before?
No, we were missed by a storm. Right? We weren't hit by a storm.
We were missed by a hurricane, but were we not impacted by the closeness of a strong storm last year or 2 years ago?
Year before.
The year before. But the fact is, COVID and Ananesta, they come so frequently now, and they come with such monstrosity.
Bishop, can I?
And you see, you're making recourse to a fund in a context where other countries to which you may ordinarily look to for some support may not be in a position now because of COVID to give you that support. So
I just want to reiterate this point as well, and this is what we're saying: be very mindful where you are spending your expenditure at this point in time. Given that we are on the cusp of a hurricane season, why would it not be prudent to have a rollout of a program that upgrades your housing stock at this time? That way you are actually fortifying your housing stock in the event that there is a hurricane, rather than putting it into other places where you are just not going to see the returns on investment in the immediate future. So these are the types of things that we're saying we're not seeing from the government in terms of becoming creative and building resilience at the same time, rather than doing the traditional things like building roads and refurbishing markets. Right now, there are a lot of our housing stock that is below the standard that it needs to withstand, let's say, for instance, even a strong Category 2 hurricane. And in light of those types of scenarios, I think the government needs to really look at how it can spend expenditure targeting resilience in the housing stock as well.
I'd like to say something also. Government refuses to learn from its mistakes. NIS funds, and NIS look awash with funds, you know, so everybody took them up and they go and spend them and everything, even building the fire station that I just complained about recently. And now they need those funds. You're not going to learn from your mistakes? Could there? We took it national insurance funds. No, we want them. We're talking about recapitalizing national insurance. You don't got to recapitalize the national insurance if you had left the capital there in the first place. Because these funds are designed for specific purposes, that can happen. They weren't happening right away, so you just take them up. And now when something happens, you don't have the money. And I'll tell you something, I'll keep saying all the time, I do not know, and nobody can tell me if the true state of national insurance funds, because they've not been audited for so long.
Very good point. Very good point. That's also in the presentation I sent to you guys, because we don't know what is the state. The Prime Minister's indicate with respect to assets, we're fine. With respect to liquidity, we have a problem. So government tried to rectify that. It's a serious issue. I don't miss that point that Senator Drake's underscored there just now, because they're going to do capital works. She's suggesting do capital works in a meaningful, more productive and in a way that addresses the urgency of the issue that awaits you out there, should a system come our way this year.
Bishop Atherley, the elephant in the room still is foreign exchange. Yes, you have mentioned that we need to diversify our tourism product, etc., whatever the case is. But you still haven't addressed, or neither the government as well, haven't quite addressed how we're going to get those inflows of foreign exchange in the short and medium terms. The trusted oil in international business sector, is that one area that can be considered? Is there any way to further incentivize it? I know we are now a very low tax jurisdiction, but is there any way to further incentivize that international business sector so that we can have some injection of foreign exchange in the short and medium term?
Well, I'll let Bruce give you 1 or 2 thoughts on that, but I would say we do have to try and find ways to incentivize that sector. We've lost a lot over the last few years out of that sector. It would seem to me that the government is developing a close relationship with the Canadian jurisdiction at this time than perhaps was in recent years the case. I think we need to leverage that relationship to see if we can recapture some of that business that we would have lost due to change in Canadian policy and due to competition from elsewhere and due to the strictures laid upon us by the international institutions to which we've been seeking to become compliant. The emphasis with Canada, in my view, should not be on looking for business re-marijuana cultivation. That seems to be where government is going. But we need to see if we can recapture some of the loss in national business coming out of the Canadian market by leveraging the new relationship which we seem to be developing in Canada. We have people who are resident ambassadors in Canada. I don't often hear, if at all, anything being said as to what is being done to inspire growth relative to the Barbados economy by developing relationships with companies, corporations, etc. In Canada. But I believe we do need to go back there. We can't keep all the eggs in the tourism basket. And national business is one frame. I mentioned others earlier. I think education and health, both those sectors, must be seen more so in terms of the foreign exchange that they can develop. Listen, they help the Barbados environment. This is a place you want to live. And I believe that the health sector with serious marketing can become potentially a source for deriving much foreign exchange. Similarly, the education sector. And we can export our educated products into this world. We've long relied on a system of remittances from those who find space in this world elsewhere. Barbados can compete with anybody else in the world. We train them so to do. And we've got to see that there is a developmental aspect to that vis-a-vis a foreign exchange earning component. Also, the attraction of institutions into Barbados. I have long said repeatedly, we got to go beyond the seeming desire to attract medical institutions. There are other areas of internationally related education that we can have attracted here to Barbados to set up institutions. Forensics is one area. There are other areas as well. So yes, we need to incentivize the area, but we need to move away from tourism. We don't need to settle for national business. There's sports. My goodness, there's sports. And government needs, I've said it, I repeat it, Colville, why is it that we can name 15, 18, 20 Barbados scholars every year for academic performance in our secondary institutions? Why isn't it we can't identify 4 or 5 sports persons who excel and fund them through attachments to overseas sporting entities and let them earn? One of the biggest industries now in the world is the sporting industry. They got entertainment, they got the creatives, the whole field of technology. Barbados has some brilliant minds. I can see on this screen here right before me one sitting right next to you. We have some brilliant minds, young people who are technologically adept and skilled. And these people can compete with the rest of the world anywhere in this world. And with this, the direction we got to go. Bruce, I don't know if you have any thought as to the international business sector.
Yeah, I pretty much concur with what you're saying, Bishop. We have been fighting really to maintain our relationships with the OECD. I mean, really fighting, and also with the Canadian issues that have been going on. But what I always find at the back of all of this is pretty much what you said, and that statement that was made in the Central Bank report this week keeps resonating with me when he kept saying, and that's what you were just talking about pretty aggressively. He kept saying we have to do economic diversification because clearly what we have, as much as we're fighting with it, has not been enough to maintain what we have, where we have to go. And so we pretty much are in the position where we're at right now. And you see the critical thing, it clearly seems when you look at the actual economic reports every single quarter when they come out, in terms of what they call the tradables part of the economy, that's a part of the economy that interacts with international business or international markets, international economies. 70% of our tradables comes from tourism alone. And that has put us in a very dire predicament because when you read carefully the lines in this the last economic report, basically our tourism industry shut down towards the latter part of March. And yet a shutdown the latter part of March pretty much obliterated our economy. It's a very frightening thing. The correlation factors and the market factors. It's a very scary thing. And so
that point is to be underscored only the latter part of March, and yet it flattened us.
Yeah, not yet factored in. Figures now for April, May, June coming up, which we will know here probably God willing in July if we're still around, right? And that is very scary. So what you have said, what you explained to Colville, is very critical. That is why he said we have to use this time and all the funds we're getting. I mean, we have the extra funds from the IMF and everything, but we have to be very strategic with it. Senator Drake said so, Senator Franklin said so, you have said so. And if we mess it up, it could really hurt us in the years to come. It is all about the management of what resources we have right now, the management of our monies. We are in a dire position with that right now.
Yeah.
Bishop, I believe, I think when Senator Drake was speaking, she mentioned about promoting agriculture more and reinventing our agriculture. I know that this government has been pushing the idea of planting more, etc., but we're doing that at a time where water is scarce.
Yeah.
We have a great challenge in terms of our water supply. How do you suggest that we deal with that situation? How do we balance it?
Addressing that to me or Senator Drake?
Both of you.
I can take that. And that's why I said I'm not hearing, innovative farming techniques coming out in the plan as it relates to the feed program. I'm hearing about traditional planting of crops rather than the construction of greenhouses, rather than the construction of hydroponic farms, aquaponic farms, where you then have a closed loop system of water and you recirculate the water within the system. So it's an extremely water efficient system, yeah? But somehow those types of initiatives are not coming out in a plan when I hear about the feed program. And that's what concerns me, because if you go into traditional farming and you rely on that because of the changing climatic conditions, what you will have is reduced production. And we've been seeing that outside is extremely dry, and the drier it is, the more water your crops will need. And if that is the direction that the government is going in, it will not be very fruitful or productive. So what you have to do then is to divert whatever expenditures or investment that you're putting into that feed program into modern technology as it relates to agricultural production.
And the only thing I would add to that, and that's also in the presentation that we sent you earlier, Janelle, if you get access to it. But the only thing I would add to that is that, yes, the availability and access to water is an issue, but this party believes very strongly as well that it needs formally to be structured and robustly so, a marketing agency that gets farming products across the spectrum of the market. So what has befallen the existing entity or the entity that used to exist? This is a serious question in relation to its function now. We're saying that the onus on marketing farm produce in Barbados, especially from smaller farmers, should not be left to the farmer himself or herself, but that an entity needs to be up and established and robustly functioning so that those produce coming from the farmlands in Barbados are strategically marketed to the benefit of the farmers and the economy in a whole. The other thing is, Janelle, that this party is considered is that you're talking about a 750-acre additional food planting program, but you're doing that at a time when a part of the large section of the market for that food was produced traditionally, the tourism sector is gone. And those hundreds of thousands of people who would in part consume what is produced in Barbados to some extent are not there anymore. So there's a question as to what happens with that production, that measure of the produce that would normally have gone to the tourism sector. And there's a question of marketing. And we believe strongly that we have got to get into this.
If I can pick up from that though, when you spoke about the tourism sector being gone so that the farmers can't rely on them, within the tourism sector, we've also lost a lot of jobs. The majority of people right now on the breadline are perhaps coming from the tourism sector because if not 99% perhaps of our hotels are closed. The attractions are closed, our restaurants are closed. That makes up the tourism sector. Now you said that government will probably have to absorb some of those jobs, that some of the unemployment. But what do we do then with the excess that can't find jobs? Do we look to retrain them? What do we do?
It's a very good question that you're asking, and that's where the government finds itself between a rock and a hard place. Because what they have touted to this point, Janelle, is that a lot of the jobs which are being lost or have been lost, or will be lost in the tourism-related sector, will be absorbed into the new level of construction activity, both private sector and public sector, that will be ongoing in Barbados. As my party is really observing our in-house discussion, how do you take a fella from being a waiter or a bartender in a hotel and overnight make him a steel bender or a plumber or a tiler? Now, what government is saying now with respect to employment prospects vis-a-vis those losing their jobs from the tourism sector, they also said previously vis-a-vis those who lost their jobs in the public sector, that they will be absorbed otherwise, most of them through a program of digitalization. Now, I don't know that we have seen that. I haven't seen numbers to suggest success attending that effort, and there's still a lot of question marks around that. So I share your concerns that the prospects for those who have lost their jobs in the tourism sector or will lose their jobs in the tourism sector are not good if the reliance is on construction and construction loan capital works project. Bruce wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to both what yourself and Senator Drakes have basically been hinting at, and it will probably answer Ms. Riley Thornhill's question about the whole thing with jobs. What has happened is, and again, I go back probably to the point statement that central bank governor made in terms of us be having to do economic diversification. When you look at what happened in the last economic crisis in 2008, coming into 10 years before that crisis, the world was pretty much on a tear. It grew by 40% as a whole. After the economic crisis, the world grew about 28%. Barbados, on the other hand, we grew pretty heavily coming into the crisis. 10 years, we had 24% growth. Since that crisis, our growth has declined. We're down at minus 6%. We are basically declined by 6%. But now this is the key thing. There were a group of countries that managed to regain their original growth, their 10-year growth coming into the crisis. They regained it coming out of that crisis. And when you look at a common factor for those countries, they were driven by innovation. They were innovating countries, and that really was where it was. Senator Drakes was talking about agriculture and how we approach, for instance, greenhouse technology and stuff. She basically was referring at the core of it, the base of it, the foundation of it was innovation. And that's what you're hinting at, Bishop Ali. We have no choice. And the things that you call were basically homegrown economies that are really built on a foundation of innovation. And that's why we were then querying and questioning this heavy emphasis back on tourism again. That's the key point out to me.
Okay, could I just mention something to you as well? you know, we're going to have a situation where the government says to some of these employers, especially in the hotel industry, barbarian jobs for barbarians, right? Right now, I was involved with a matter just this week. I was supposed to represent the lady who was charged with an offense at one of these hotels. And unfortunately, the case didn't come off because the owner, when he discovered it was me, says he don't want to deal with Franklin, come back to work. So the case finished just like that. But that particular hotel property is now looking for, according to my instructions here, an accounts consultant. What is an accounts consultant? You know, you have some person who you want to give a job to, who want to go to England. And we have a lot of that in Barbados, especially at the major hotels on the West Coast. The few examples, and I don't think I should sing their praises here at this point, but there's one hotel group, Barbados group, that don't have a lot of expertise. All the rest, all the major hotels, they find ways to exclude bedrooms at the senior level. And this is something that the government has to look into now, especially when Barbadians, and I'm talking about qualified Barbadians, and you don't need more qualifications than that because the Bajans are teaching the people when they come here. You have housekeepers, but you call them by a fancy name, and then they are in charge of the housekeeping function. You have people on the golf courses who are responsible for golf courses. Never seen a grass wearing Barbados before. You have even at one hotel, the guy responsible for security on the beach is a non-national. So we have to refocus government on these work permit things because a lot of them say, oh, if we don't get these work permits, we will shut down. And government get frightened and give these work permits. So Barbadians, jobs for Barbadians first. Now, if there's no Barbadians available for the job, and there are very few of those, then you go outside. But we are going outside first.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, unless you have other questions or comments, I want to thank you. I want to close by quickly making reference to some of the things I had represented in the document we sent to you, media houses, earlier. Prime Minister's proposals clearly seek to stop the economic slide towards double-digit decline in the Barbados economy. They seek to provide some measure of bailout for businesses, especially tourism-related businesses. They seek to stimulate spending in the economy to provide for better prospects for businesses. They represent an attempt to recover job losses and to stop the slide towards a trebling or quadrupling of normal unemployment levels. They're intended to soften the impact on the social security system vis-a-vis NIS. They attempt to further agricultural output and address the food import bill. The opposition, however, is persuaded that there must be expanded vision that goes beyond construction and tourism, and one which sends significant signals and which underscore the value going forward of the digital economy, the creative sector, the renewable energy sector, new forms of agriculture, health and education and sports more so as foreign exchange earning sectors. At the end of the day, our economy must be one in which ownership becomes further democratized, where there's a growing entrepreneurial culture, where there's a learned investment culture, where no household falls below a minimum level income, where we vastly reduce the 30% unemployment level among young people, and that includes UE and other university graduates, and this was even prior to COVID, where the immorality of underemployment is significantly reduced, and where our system and incentives are such that much of the 30% underground economy is brought into the mainstream of the Barbados economy. We must pump what little money resources we have into money saving, foreign currency earning, rather than import biased sectors. Proposals do not intend to, and so they do not succeed in taking into account where we are going. That is the proposals outlined by the Prime Minister. They represent, in our view, an attempt at a short fix. And I do hope you have access to the document, but we sent it to all of the media houses, some in audio form, and of course to the print media in printed form. I want to thank you for joining us.
I only got my copy in audio form. Could you send me a print copy, please?
All right, not a problem.
Okay.
We will send that to you as well. Thank you for your interest, Colville Mousy. Now, I will promise you that in 2 or 3 days, we will have an interface with you on the central bank governor's quarterly report specifically, and allow Senator Drakes and Bruce Hennis to expound with respect to that. We've concentrated largely on the Prime Minister's proposals, which came on the eve, and I think deliberately so, of the central bank governor's report, but that report itself is another story. So in a couple of days, we will have that interface with you, and we would invite you to join us for that. Thank you for your interest today. Please stay safe, and God's blessing on you and yours.